In a world where silence is mistaken for weakness and kindness is mistaken for surrender, there are only two kinds of men: those who get tested and those who get replaced. Welcome to Stoic Focus, where we strip away illusions, unmask betrayal, and speak the truth no one dares to say out loud. This isn't motivation. This is preparation. If you lead, if you build, if you've ever been burned by those you once trusted, then this channel is your weapon. Subscribe and never mistake smiles for loyalty again, because power isn't preserved by noise. It's preserved by vision and the strength to draw the line before the storm arrives. Part 1. The crisis reveals true loyalty. When everything's going right, loyalty is cheap. People raise their glasses, slap your back, and promise they'd take a bullet for you. But that's not loyalty. That's comfort wearing a friendly face. Real loyalty doesn't reveal itself in the sunshine, it shows up in the storm. There's a moment in every person's life where the sky darkens. You lose the job, the money dries up, your name gets dragged through the mud, and suddenly, silence. The phones stop ringing. The people who used to check in vanish, not with a bang, but with a quiet absence that echoes louder than any insult. I've lived it. And if you've ever stood in the middle of that storm, confused, betrayed, hurt, then you know what I'm talking about. The people you thought would never leave suddenly forget how to stand beside you. Marcus Aurelius, one of the most powerful men in Roman history, once wrote, "When you wake up in the morning, tell yourself the people I deal with today will be meddling, ungrateful, arrogant, dishonest, jealous, and surly." That wasn't pessimism. It was preparation. A Stoic accepts the reality of human behavior so he can rise above it, not be broken by it. Let me tell you about Ethan, a friend I once trusted with everything. During the highs, he was front row. Birthdays, promotions, even the weekend barbecues, always there. But when my business hit a wall, when I needed advice, support, or even just someone to sit with me in the silence, he disappeared. No calls, no texts. Weeks turned to months. Then one day, when things started turning around, he reappeared with a smile and a perfectly timed excuse. "I was giving you space," he said. Space. No. He was giving himself distance from discomfort, from responsibility, from showing up when it wasn't convenient. And here's the Stoic truth. Someone who disappears during your suffering doesn't deserve a front row seat to your success. If you forgive betrayal born from cowardice, you're not being noble. You're setting a precedent. You're silently announcing to everyone in your circle, it's okay to leave me when I'm down. As long as you come back when things look good again. That's not strength. That's surrender. You don't build an empire by tolerating fair weather loyalty. You build it by identifying who stands beside you when everything's collapsing. One person who stays during the storm is worth more than 100 who cheer in the sunshine. And sometimes, you don't need to yell or make a scene. You just remember the silence, and you never forget the faces who wore it. Here's what happens when you let betrayal slide. The next crisis comes. And now, even more people feel comfortable walking away. Why? Because you taught them there are no consequences. You taught them that your trust is easily repaired with shallow apologies. But a Stoic sees through performance. We don't demand perfection, but we never tolerate patterns of abandonment. So how do you respond? You don't need revenge. You need boundaries. You don't need to scream. You need clarity. When the storm passes, and it always does, you choose who gets to walk back into your life. And if they were absent when you were bleeding, they don't get to dance when you're healed. Seneca once said, "It is not the man who has too little, but the man who craves more. That is poor." I'd argue the same applies to loyalty. It's not about having many friends. It's about the ones who don't vanish when things get hard. If you've ever gone through a season where people left when you needed them most, let this be your reminder. Their absence was your clarity. And if you want to build anything strong, be it a business, a relationship, a legacy, you must start by protecting it from the rot of conditional loyalty. Stay sharp, stay grounded, and never confuse reunion with redemption. Part 2. The Coward on the Throne. Leadership isn't about titles. It's about presence. And nothing erodes presence faster than fear hiding behind silence. You may think the greatest threat to any organization is rebellion, disloyalty, or outside attack. But it's not. It's a leader who hesitates, a man at the top who's afraid to act. Cowardice rarely looks like shaking hands or panicked eyes. No, it's more subtle. It wears a suit. It speaks in calm tones. It hides behind words like, "Let's wait," or "We need more time." And in doing so, it injects uncertainty into the bloodstream of everyone watching. When the leader won't decide, people below stop believing. They start whispering, questioning, drifting. The chain of command, broken. Not by force, but by doubt. There's a battlefield in every life, whether it's a crisis in your company, a breakdown in your family, or a moral decision that no one else wants to make. In that moment, when all eyes turn to you, the Stoic doesn't flinch, he doesn't stall, hoping someone else will take the risk. He steps forward, not because he's certain, but because he knows that leadership requires action. Marcus Aurelius ruled during plague, war, and political betrayal. And yet he wrote, "A man's worth is no greater than the worth of his ambitions." What's the worth of a leader whose ambition is to avoid blame, to seek approval rather than truth? That's not a leader. That's a placeholder, waiting to be replaced. I once worked under a CEO who had all the right language, calm, measured, diplomatic. But when the market crashed, so did he. Endless meetings, no decisions, emails filled with empty words, and in the chaos, teams made their own choices, some good, most reckless. Why? Because when the top is silent, people look sideways for direction. They improvise. They panic. They scatter. A Stoic understands that power is fragile, not because others can take it, but because you can lose it by doing nothing. Hesitation doesn't just kill momentum. It spreads. It tells your team, your family, your followers, "I don't trust myself." And once they sense that, they stop trusting you. Now, don't confuse decisiveness with recklessness. A Stoic leader doesn't rush blindly. He prepares, he thinks, but when the moment to act arrives, he acts. Because courage isn't the absence of fear, it's the mastery of it. It's being scared and stepping forward anyway. The battlefield general who pauses when his troops are watching isn't just delaying, they're watching him lose control. The father who avoids hard conversations lets his children drift. The CEO who delegates every decision, becomes irrelevant. That's the silent decay of cowardice, and no one ever notices until it's too late. So how do you spot this in yourself? Ask when the moment comes. Do I lean in or disappear behind comfort phrases? Do I act with clarity or drown in the opinions of others? Do I fear being wrong more than I fear being nothing? There's a Stoic mantra that guides me every time I feel hesitation rise. The obstacle is the way. That means the harder the choice, the more urgent it is to act. Cowardice isn't just a failure of character, it's a failure of responsibility. If you lead, and you let fear guide your silence, then you're not steering the ship. You're just letting it drift, hoping no one notices it's sinking. Don't be that man. The Stoic throne is not built on popularity, consensus, or comfort. It's built on clarity in chaos. And when it shakes, the one who stands firm, not perfectly, but firmly, keeps it standing. Because in the end, it's not the loud enemy that topples the kingdom. It's the quiet king who chose to wait. Part 3. The sweet poison of flattery. They smile when you walk in. Nod at every word you say. Praise your decisions publicly, loudly, perfectly. And you think, finally, someone who understands me. But beware, flattery is rarely about you. It's about them, their position, their comfort, their access to your power. The Stoics had a word for this kind of trap adulation, empty praise, given to inflate a person's ego while quietly draining their clarity. It feels like loyalty, but it functions like poison. Real allies tell you the truth, even when it stings. Fake ones applaud you all the way to your downfall. I learned this the hard way. Years ago, I led a project at a company I co-founded. It was bold, risky, and I needed real feedback. But instead, my closest advisors told me exactly what I wanted to hear. You're a genius. No one else could do this. This is going to blow up in a good way. It did blow up, but not in a good way. We missed key flaws in our plan because no one had the courage or the honesty to point them out. I remember sitting in the aftermath, not angry at the market or the investors, but at myself for surrounding my leadership with mirrors instead of windows. Stoicism isn't about being praised. It's about being anchored in reality. Marcus Aurelius wrote in his Meditations, "If anyone can refute me, show me I'm making a mistake, or looking at things from the wrong perspective, I'll gladly change." It's the truth I'm after, not ego. That's the Stoic mindset, truth over comfort, clarity over compliments. So how do you spot a flatterer? First, they never disagree, even when they should. They always have the right words, always delivered at the right moment. And it all feels a little too perfect. They call you brilliant without asking hard questions. They defend your worst ideas as if they were holy writ. And when you fail, they vanish, or worse, they pretend they tried to warn you. But they didn't. They just waited, collecting benefits while your confidence grew fat and blind. Flattery erodes judgment. It turns strong leaders into fragile ones, unable to hear dissent, allergic to challenge, drunk on affirmation. You stop asking, "Is this right?" and start asking, "Do they still like me?" And once your self-worth depends on applause, you're no longer a leader. You're a performer, trapped on stage. Here's a hard truth. The person who always agrees with you is not your friend. They're managing you, molding your image of yourself so they can stay close, benefit quietly, and escape when the ship sinks. But the one who says, "You're wrong here," or "Have you considered this blind spot that's gold, stoic gold?" that person is uncomfortable, and you should keep them close. Seneca said, "It is not that we are given a short life, but that we waste much of it, and we waste it listening to those who only echo back what we want to hear. So build a circle that sharpens you. Seek voices that question, not flatter. Create a space where truth is more valuable than harmony, because harmony built on lies will crack under pressure. But truth, even when it grates, builds fortresses. Here's how I apply it now. If someone praises me too quickly, I pause. If they never disagree, I ask myself, what's their motive? And if I find someone willing to challenge me, respectfully and intelligently, I hold on to them like a rare treasure. You don't need fans. You need feedback. And remember, the man who flatters you today will flatter your enemy tomorrow if it serves him. Because flattery isn't loyalty, it's self-preservation dressed in silk. So, look around. Who always agrees? Who's never challenged you? Who's always smiling, but never honest? That's not an ally. That's a shadow waiting for your fall. Part 4. Public defiance must be addressed. Power isn't just built, it's performed. And nothing disrupts that performance faster than public defiance left unanswered. You may think, I'm above reacting. I'll take the high road. But in the world of leadership, silence in the face of challenge doesn't look noble. It looks weak. The Stoics weren't interested in ego, but they understood the weight of perception. Marcus Aurelius didn't tolerate disorder in his legions because he was proud. He did it because discipline maintained structure, and structure preserved peace. Let me say this clearly. The moment someone openly mocks your decision, questions your authority in front of others, or tests your boundaries in public, and you let it slide, you've lost more than that moment. You've lost momentum, because others are watching. Always. I've seen this play out in boardrooms. A team leader proposes a strategy, and someone laughs. You really think that'll work? It's brushed off as a joke. Everyone chuckles. No one confronts it. But what just happened? A line was crossed. Respect was shifted. The leader's authority slightly downgraded. Now multiply that moment. Watch how slowly, over time, commands become suggestions, orders become options, and the leader, the one who thought tolerance would earn him favor, is now a figurehead, not a force. A Stoic doesn't rule by fear, but he doesn't rule by flattery either. He rules by clarity. And clarity demands that disrespect, especially in public, is addressed firmly and immediately. It doesn't have to be cruel. It doesn't need yelling or grand gestures, but it must be seen. The room must feel it, because power, as Machiavelli warned, is often not taken. It's surrendered inch by inch through tolerance. People don't challenge authority with swords anymore. They challenge it with snide remarks, with sarcastic questions, with well-timed silence. And if one person gets away with it, the rest start thinking, if he did it, maybe I can too. Stoic leadership means you don't let that seed grow. Now, some will say, isn't this insecurity? Isn't it petty to care about public image? No, it's not about ego. It's about stability. It's about the social contract that holds teams, families, and empires together. If that contract says leadership can be mocked without consequence, then don't be surprised when chaos follows. In one of my earlier ventures, a junior partner publicly questioned my decision in a meeting. I let it slide, didn't want to make a scene. Over the next month, 2 more followed suit. Within weeks, our entire structure fractured because I taught them there were no consequences. I wasn't being wise. I was being passive. That was the moment I learned Stoicism isn't silence, it's strategic response. It's knowing when a sharp, calm, "That's not acceptable here," is more powerful than any speech. Look around you. Is someone constantly testing you in front of others? Smiling while undermining, interrupting when you speak. Don't lash out, but don't ignore it either. Stand your ground. Set your tone. Because the crowd isn't listening to what's said. They're watching who flinches. Seneca said, "He who does not prevent a crime when he can, encourages it." The same applies here. When you permit public disrespect, you participate in your own decline. Leadership isn't about being liked. It's about being respected. And respect, once lost in public, is very hard to earn back. So remember, the first person to challenge you publicly is doing more than speaking. They're testing. How you respond isn't about just that person. It's about everyone else watching and the message they receive. Because if you don't address it, you've just rewritten the rules. Part 5, Ingratitude is the silent knife. Not all betrayal comes with anger. Some arrives quietly wrapped in forgetfulness. You give, you sacrifice. You lift someone up when they have nothing. And then one day, they stop showing up. No thank you. No loyalty. Just distance. And that, right there, is one of the most dangerous poisons a leader can face in gratitude. The Stoics didn't expect applause. They didn't expect admiration. But they did value integrity. They believed in the natural order of things, that when someone receives goodness, they respond with honor. But today, we see something different. A pattern where people accept kindness like currency, spend it, and then disappear when the cost of loyalty comes due. I felt it. You probably have too. There was a man I mentored years ago, taught him everything I knew, introduced him to people who opened doors he could never unlock alone. He used those connections, rose quickly, and then vanished. No gratitude, no recognition. In fact, when I heard from him again, it wasn't to say thank you. It was to ask for more. That moment taught me something no business book ever did. Gratitude isn't owed, but ingratitude must never be rewarded. Why? Because when you allow the ungrateful to stay in your life, your team, your inner circle, you teach everyone watching that honor doesn't matter. That character is optional. That taking without giving back is acceptable. The Stoic doesn't punish out of spite. He withdraws support from those who prove they can't carry the weight of loyalty. He doesn't shout. He doesn't shame. He simply closes the door. Seneca once wrote, "He who receives a benefit with gratitude repays the first installment on his debt, not because life is transactional, but because relationships, when healthy, are reciprocal." A person who is ungrateful will not just forget what you gave, they will use it against you when it's convenient. They'll stand on the foundation you built and then throw stones at you from above. And here's the most dangerous part. They don't feel guilt. They feel entitlement. Stoicism teaches us to accept the nature of people, not to become bitter, but to become wise. Once you see the pattern, you don't need to get angry. You just stop investing in barren ground. Stop pouring time, energy, opportunity into those who've proven they only take. You want to test someone's character. Stop giving. Watch what happens. The loyal will remain. The parasites will disappear. And when they do, don't chase them. Don't invite them back when success returns. Because if you do, you're teaching them and everyone else that using you has no cost. Here's what I do. Now I give without expectation. But I observe carefully. The moment I detect consistent ingratitude, I make a mental note. This is not someone I build with. This is not someone I protect. This is someone I let go. Because the ungrateful don't just drain you. They destabilize the entire structure of your leadership. If they feel nothing for what you gave, they'll feel nothing when it's time to hurt you. Marcus Aurelius didn't expect people to be perfect, but he did expect himself to be vigilant, and so must we. Gratitude cannot be demanded, but disrespect must not be ignored. Mercy is a gift, not a license. So ask yourself, who in your life has benefited from your presence, your generosity, your loyalty, and then vanished when you needed them? That's not forgetfulness. That's a quiet declaration. You don't matter anymore. Believe them the first time. Part 6. Ambition without loyalty is treason in waiting. Ambition is not the enemy. In fact, Stoics believed in ambition when it's disciplined, grounded in service, and tied to integrity. Marcus Aurelius himself was emperor of Rome, not by accident, but by duty. He wrote not to seek greatness, but to manage its burden. But here's the danger: ambition without loyalty. You've seen it before. The charming, competent individual. They never speak too loudly, never rock the boat. They smile in meetings, stay neutral during conflict, and appear helpful always at just the right time. And yet, something feels off. They never commit to a vision. They shift alliances when the wind changes. They're never the first to support, but always close enough to benefit. That's not a leader. That's a candidate for your position. Machiavelli warned us centuries ago. The man with ambition and no ties will never protect the throne he waits to replace it. I've worked with someone like that. Brilliant, strategic, persuasive. At first, I thought, this guy's a future partner. But over time, I noticed the subtle maneuvers. He avoided accountability. He remained just far enough from real risk, but close enough to take credit when things succeeded. When setbacks came, he vanished. And when I started to rebuild, he was right there again, offering advice, pretending to be helpful. He wasn't helping. He was calculating. Ambition, when separated from loyalty, becomes a ticking time bomb inside your organization. The Stoics would say, judge the man not by his words, but by his commitments. Does he stand with you when it's unpopular? Does he speak truth when it's inconvenient? Or does he hover, quietly collecting influence, waiting for your moment of weakness? Because when you stumble, and everyone does, he will already be positioned to step in. And the worst part, no one will see it coming. because men like this wear diplomacy like armor. They say the right things. They avoid drama. They even seem humble. But make no mistake, their loyalty is only to opportunity. So what do? You don't declare war. You don't spread rumors. That's noise. What you do is make a choice. Either bind that man's future so tightly to yours that he has something to lose if you fall, or remove him quietly before he becomes a threat. Because a disloyal genius is more dangerous than an honest fool. Seneca wrote, "Associate with those who will make a better man of you. Welcome those whom you yourself can improve." The Stoic path is about growth. Yes, but never at the cost of stability. If someone refuses to tie themselves to your mission, to your team, to your values, believe them. They're not building with you. They're positioning themselves above you. It's not paranoia. It's pattern recognition. The most successful leaders I've known didn't fear talent. They feared disloyalty wrapped in charm. So watch for it. Do they vanish in hard moments? Do they praise in public, but criticize in private? Do they delay big decisions, but rush to insert themselves when success is near? That's not support. That's shadow politics. And in the world of Stoic leadership, clarity is survival. The throne doesn't fall to rebels with flags. It falls to silence, to ambition unchained, to the man in the back who smiles when you speak and speaks louder when you fall. So ask yourself, is there someone near you who's never really stood with you, but always stands close? If your gut says yes, believe it and act accordingly. Because Stoicism isn't soft. It's not naive. It doesn't assume the best of everyone. It watches, it learns, and when necessary, it draws the line. Part 7. The Mask of Morality. There's a new kind of threat in today's world. It doesn't raise its voice. It doesn't throw punches. It doesn't even look like opposition. It looks like virtue. It sounds like concern. It comes dressed in phrases like, "just doing what's right," or "I'm standing up for the truth." But underneath, it's not justice. It's ambition, covered in robes of righteousness. The Stoics knew the difference between real virtue and performance. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "Waste no more time arguing what a good man should be. Be one." But what happens when people stop being good and start acting good to gain control? That's the danger of morality as a weapon. I've seen this firsthand. A former partner once challenged my leadership, not in private, but in front of the team. He claimed he just wanted transparency. He cared about the culture. It sounded noble, but it wasn't. It was calculated. He didn't want improvement. He wanted position. And instead of confronting me honestly, he used public virtue to shift the room, painting himself as the man of ethics and me as the cold one. That's not honesty. That's theater. A Stoic leader must not fall for the act. Public morality, when used to shame, control, or manipulate, is not about values. It's about power. Because once someone positions themselves as the voice of conscience, they become untouchable. You can't argue without looking cruel. You can't resist without looking corrupt. And that's the trap. If you respond, you're labeled defensive. If you stay silent, you're labeled guilty. Either way, they win the narrative. So what do? You call it for what it is, performance. Not in anger, not in panic, but in clarity. Real morality doesn't seek an audience. It corrects in private. It speaks softly. It builds. Fake morality performs. It demands followers. It tears down. Seneca warned that false virtue is the most dangerous mask of all because it deceives even the wise. It creates division under the illusion of unity. And when leaders give in to that illusion, they lose control not just of their team, but of their own voice. You've probably seen it, the employee who suddenly becomes the voice of the people. The friend who criticizes your choices out of love. The team member who calls for transparency only when it suits them. They don't want truth. They want influence. And if you tolerate it, you're handing them the stage and stepping off it yourself. Let me be clear. True moral courage doesn't attack. It doesn't seek applause. It aligns action with principle, quietly, consistently, without drama. So ask yourself, is there someone in your circle who hides ambition behind virtue? Someone who uses guilt as a weapon? Someone who talks ethics when they want power? Don't ignore the signs. Don't confuse preaching with principles, because if you allow one person to control you through shame, you're opening the door for many more. And soon, your throne becomes a stage, your power becomes a target, and your leadership reduced to defending yourself instead of guiding others. Marcus Aurelius didn't rule by appearances. He ruled by example. So should you. Draw a line between real virtue and theatrical morality. Protect that line. Defend it not with cruelty, but with strength. Because when the crowd sees you respond with unwavering calm and quiet confidence, they stop listening to noise and start respecting presence. In the end, Stoicism is not about being soft. It's about being anchored, unshaken by praise, unbroken by pressure, and unmanipulated by those who weaponize morality. Because a man grounded in real virtue never needs to prove it. He just lives it unapologetically and unshakably.